Congratulations on this movie. I've never seen anything quite like it before. I hope you know you have something special on your hands. So this is your second movie with writer-director Zach Cregger. I would like to know a little bit about the first time you heard this movie. How did he describe it to you? What was the vision? What were some of these early ideas that you guys discussed?
Interestingly, I didn't really have too many conversations with Zach in pre-production for this. He sent me the script. I thought it was really fantastic, but otherwise, we kept our dialogue pretty minimal. He did mention something to me though while I was assembling that was actually pretty helpful. Was that one day I asked him on set, it's like, hey Zach, how do you want to handle your transitions in this movie? And he mentioned that he wanted things to be very sharp and to keep things to lean into really abrupt transitions. Mm-hmm. One of the ways that Zach also works, he photoboards everything, so there's a really clear visual design for the scenes, and I will sometimes take a peek at those, but in general I try to just let the footage dictate when I'm watching the dailies. So again, there wasn't really a lot of preparation, just like, hey, here's the script, and oh, that's cool, dude, yeah.
That perfectly sets up my next question. I would like to know a bit about your process. So that dailies process, you're getting material in. What goes into the infancy, the birth of the movie, those for early days? And tell me a little bit about your team, your assistants, your crew. Where did you cut the movie? Walk me through the first few weeks of doing this.
We posted in New York City, and my first AE, his name was Max Berger, and Josephine Wheelwright was my other assistant editor. They both brought some really excellent tools to the project. I relied on them to show them early cuts to kind of see how things were playing, and they definitely were instrumental in how we approached just some of our initial rough sound design, et cetera, too. But for me, it's I have to watch everything. My process with dailies is that I do, it really depends on the scene, obviously, but in general, when the scene calls for it, which particularly if the scene has, say it's a dramatic scene with two actors and there's a lot of dialogue. So what I'll do is I have a notebook that I just have a string out of all the dailies, and I will watch the dailies and I will write by hand stuff that stands out to me and just see the entire, everything that was shot, and just kind of make little notes in my notepad for what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Then I'll also compare that to say what were takes on set that were select takes, et cetera, that they remembered from the day before I start putting things together and start sketching and doing drafts of the scene. And that's my approach specifically to try to find nuances in performance and, just to have stuff that I can also show Zach later on if it's, maybe there's a piece that an actor gives you that you don't know how it fits. I'll save that. It may not be something I know how to work into the scene for the first cut for Zach, but it'll be something I have in my back pocket to bring to the table later. And I kind of know we have this and this, and have we considered this? I didn't really know how this would feel, but this could be an interesting acting beat, et cetera. For stuff that's a little bit more action oriented, I will generally look at all the different setups and look at the select takes and potentially even photo boards too, if it calls for it in the scene, and try to get a sense of what the visual intent was for the scene. And then after I do a sketch from there, I will go back and start to really just dig into all the dailies. It's a lot of watching and observing in the beginning for me, and there's a lot of time up front that enables me to really learn the footage and understand the movie that I can bring to the collaboration with the director later.
That's a great jumping off point, because that's part of my next question, actually, is talk to me a little bit about those early decisions when you're finding the movie. Was there a point anywhere in the assembly process, or even in the first few weeks of the director's cut, where you're looking at and trying to ascertain, what is the voice of this thing? Is it pretty close to what Zach set out to do in the sense of the tone, the structure? Are you making discoveries of what the movie is not at that point? And as you're creating the kind of curate and funnel the things that work really well. And there's a lot that work very, very well about this movie.
I would say actually, with this particular film, it's very much true to the script, the structure that you see here. I mean, we made some trims, and there's only a few scenes actually that were cut out that were on the cutting room floor. There's, some scenes are shorter, obviously, but while at one point we did a little experimentation with structure, what you see on screen is really what Zach had intended, and we really there was a plan, and we really stuck to it. And I think in some ways that all of the pre-production that went into the movie with Zach and his DP paid off in the sense that sometimes those things actually work out, and there's we didn't really deviate from it too much, honestly.
I'm noticing a lot of visual motifs throughout the film as well, like the Steadicam or the stuff behind people's backs.
Yeah.
A lot of the zoom work. We talked earlier a bit about the transitional work, where it's kind of the hard, quick staccato things to move us from events to events.
Yeah.
I'm very curious for you to talk about a little bit about the structure of this movie, because that's a very unique way of taking us from character to character, and it's one of my favorite things about the film. The film presents us with these cliffhangers of whether it's Julia's hair getting snipped, or the attack in the gas station parking lot, or in the Archer's discovery about how the lines intersect on these trajectories. Can you walk me through the craft of developing these storylines? How do audiences their reactions to this structure that you're undergoing, and if that underwent any additional experimentation or modulation to end up where you guys settled on?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges with the movie was to figure out, this on the fine-tuning level was, say, how many times we need to repeat certain moments of the story. That was where we found some of our trims, was that we, for instance, there's a scene where Alex and Justine have an argument outside of his house before he runs in. That originally played both in Justine's chapter and also in Alex's chapter. And when he runs in, we also revealed in an older cut of the film that Gladys was watching the whole thing from the window. We found some beats like that weren't necessary, and we only knew that from watching it with audiences, seeing where people were leaning in, where people were, checking out of the film, trying to call that, sort of sense out what that experience is for the audience. So there was a few other places too. The same thing with James and Paul. We made a really big cut in the James chapter where we had the entire side of James's experience of getting arrested. Not just Paul's part of the conversation. There was another version of that where in the chapter with the homeless man, James, that it was we play out the arrest on James's side and their conversation outside the car. And again, it didn't really feel necessary, and it was one of those things that was bogging down the movie. And but we discovered that through audience screenings, and also just from watching the film repeatedly and trying to feel where things really, it's a feeling thing, honestly. So there's a lot of small little things like that in the film.
Very iterative. You're going through micro screenings, putting it up. Are you taking a lot of audience questionnaires as you're doing this? Or you're just kind of sussing out the energy in the room to make these cuts?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, but fundamentally it's hard sometimes. I feel like there's always this idea of sometimes a note isn't, the note that you're given is actually pointing to another part of the
note
film.
Behind the note, yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of times it's a note that's actually, say someone is really troubled by a scene. It could be two people in a bar. People are oh, I hate that scene, I hate that scene. It's probably because something a few scenes later earlier isn't working. Because the cumulative effect when you're watching something that's occurring over time.
The way I've described to the directors is does the audience understand the stakes of that scene?
Exactly.
Do they understand
Yeah.
what the person wants and what's in their way? Because if that's not clear, that scene might be a little bit boring.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so, so it's kind of like trying to use our detective hats in that sense, but also, again, just like watching it over and over again, watching it with people, and trying to cull information from that. I mean, it's tricky also because one of the things that we found too is that you're setting up the film in some ways is starting over, 6 times, and you want to be careful that you don't create the expectation that every chapter, say, is going to be the length of, say, Justine's chapter, for instance. You need to sort of know how to pace the beginnings of the chapters that follow, particularly as they cascade into Alex, because you don't want to lose people's patience.
I've noticed there's even a bit of a sonic difference between the structures as well. I was watching this back down last night, and I realized the music direction in some of the chapters feels quite different from chapter to chapter as well. Would you agree with that, or am I imagining this?
No, you're definitely that's definitely true.
I would love to hear you talk about the musical process of cueing this with the Holiday Brothers and Zach, who is a composer on the film as well. Yes.
Yeah, so that was
Walk me through that.
Yeah, that was actually so fun. It was that for this film, the first time I presented the cut to Zach, he wanted to be totally dry, outside of the needle drops that were scripted already. That we had no music in the film for the assembly, and
that's the first time Zach's seen things like completely dry as well. Nothing in there.
Yeah, and part of that was because Zach was going to be writing the music with Hayes Holiday and Ryan Holiday, and he didn't want to have any influence, temp-love, basically, which is something that is very, very challenging to break.
I think all the editors here can definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so
I hear 1 or 2 laughs.
But yeah, so it was great. Like they were in office with us, and so there was a music room at the edit. We're all kind of like a big family on the post in this project. We had like half of a floor with like 10 or 12 different offices, and the composers had one office. So Zach would go and work with them for part of the day, and then come work on the edit with me for part of the day, and then I can always pop in to the music room and see what's going on, and we can talk about musical needs we may have, or moments, etc. But yeah, I mean, that was a really great part of this process. It kept it really organic, and I really enjoyed that element, that we didn't have to wait. Like we could just get music for a scene when we needed it, and then also do various iterations of it. So yeah, we were pretty lucky with that.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful, and it's so effective and so unique to this particular film as well. Something else that is very, very unique to this movie. I think it's safe to say that Aunt Gladys is one of the standout characters of the entire year. I saw more Aunt Gladyses at Halloween parties than Leonardo DiCaprio's in bathrobes. And I think it's safe to say the next 10 years we're going to see a lot of Aunt Gladyses at Halloween costumes. Talk to me about this character. We see glimpses of her in some, by the way, I haven't even talked about the jump scares in this film. Holy shit. There are some excellent jumps in this film. Yeah. I would love for you to go into that eventually, but talk to me about Aunt Gladys. We see whispers and glimpses of this individual until roughly around the halfway point, I think it's safe to say. Mm-hmm. How does her appearance, her introduction into the movie, or her significant introduction around the halfway point in the office, how does that change the movie, in your opinion? Does it? What were you finding?
I mean, it's really interesting. I feel like, I'm not really quite sure how to answer that, honestly. For me, it's like, there's definitely that scene for me, it was always very funny. I mean, so it was definitely like an interjection of energy and comedy into the film. And we actually had another version of that scene which leaned into the humor a little bit more. But we were finding that it was breaking some of Gladys's menace, so we had to dial that back a little bit.
That probably requires a lot of discipline as well. For something that on the short term feels like, oh, this is really nice, but in the greater context, maybe we got to make an excision here for the greater good.
Yeah, and again, it was just more like swapping takes, honestly. So it's like, just some surprising. Amy with her footage, she always had really, really interesting moments, and there was like such a joy of things and a plethora of things to choose from. And so it was, in that scene in particular, it was like, if we leaned into the comedy more, we could have had this really kind of off the wall introduction to Gladys, even more so than it already is. But it was definitely one of those things where it became clear that it was diminishing like some of the threat, that she would have later with Alex. But it was about shading. I feel like that's one of the things that was great also about, I think, all the actors in the movie, that we had the material that we could create different levels and shades with the performance, So that was particularly, I found that was one of the more fun parts of the process, to really to dial those in. So
I imagine that really goes toward the ending as well. But one of the more cathartic endings, I think, in all of cinema this year. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but like the film really grabs me in terms of wanting to know what happens to these kids, and how the little breadcrumbs that you and Zach and the entire team has spent to get us to that point. And so by the time he's in the bathroom and he breaks the twig and Amy's like, oh shit, and starts running, right. I am 100% on board for whatever happens after that. And the kids going through windows, it's just such a fun, cathartic release. Probably the most fun I've had in movies all year. Talk to me about that experience of cutting together that death, because holy shit, wow. I imagine you probably had a wealth of material to deal with, but
it was actually kind of interesting. There was actually quite a bit for the part where Gladys gets ripped apart. There was like quite a bit of stuff to choose from. But there was I think working to where we eventually got to, we had to kind of build to this frenetic kind of crazy energy, for that moment. And that was, before then, everything, what was nice about it is there was actually a lot of long takes. For instance, there's a huge oneer right before the rip apart where Gladys is getting chased by one of the kids through the house. And so moments like that, I think, really help with the experience of the rip apart, because you have these, longer notes, basically, like whole notes of action that then we can get into this kind of more staccato-y, very cutty section with the rip apart, So
that reminds me. So one of the more sections that I'm really leaning into the film, where I really want to know more, is the start of that last chapter, where we're getting the entire backstory with Aunt Gladys coming to this family dynamic, with the parents being put under a spell. The film has gone through a lot of relatively quick chapters up until that point, and this really feels like it's given a chance to kind of explain and demonstrate everything that's kind of led up to that. Can you tell me about the process of building that particular chapter? Were there any unique challenges? This is coming around like 2/3 through the movie, and we're getting a lot of backstory.
So for me, it was how the experience of the other 5 chapters before that, what was, do we have the energy for hopefully we get to the point in the movie and we see Alex's title card come up and people are actually oh shit, this is,
now we're gonna learn what happened.
Yeah. So I mean, if we'd done our jobs, that would be that would be the experience. But great. But yeah. So I feel like with his chapter, it was a sense of that was also a place we had a lot of little mini trims. It was just trying to again not. We could have had a 40-minute Alex chapter actually, honestly, but it would have just been a lot of soup eating and stuff like that, Yeah. So, it was one of those things of just similar to before, just watching and refining and trying to just yank out stuff that was not pushing not having us race towards current at that point in the movie,
Yeah.
And for me though, that the key scene there really is the scenes between him and Gladys, particularly the one where she threatens him at the where the parents stab themselves with a fork,
one of the more terrifying scenes in the film.
No,
too.
totally, and I mean that was also one of the days too that we had again some takes from Amy where. You could just hold on the take and the close-up, and normally, traditionally, you probably would want to cut away, get a reaction at times, but it was too compelling, honestly. So we were able to just really live in this moment with her and her threatening him, and it was definitely just even from the dailies, I was like, wow, this is going to be. I'm really excited about the scene when we finally put it together.
This is going to be really, really terrible. I can't wait to see how it comes together.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. I would like to open the floor up to questions if anybody up there has anything. Yes, sir.
If you had Did you have any specific scenes that were your particular favorite? And if so, what inspiration did you get from that scene to make it happen?
Question was, did you have any favorite scenes, and was there any particular inspiration?
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite scenes is the first time we learn about Gladys's magic with the stick in the kitchen. And, that was pretty early on in the shoot. Actually, I don't remember what day it was, but, there was a lot of coordinating because they had a lot of setups. There's a lot of different shots in that scene, and some tricky performance stuff too. So I think like once, I don't know what, actually what's really interesting, I did an assembly of that scene, and my assistant Max, he had like randomly put some music over it and was like watching it with our post PA. And I was just like, Max, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I just put the score on. You just have to see this, just see what this looks like. And I'd watched that with him, and I was like, oh wow, I think the scene's really going to work. And then that was kind of, Max was actually kind of instrumental and kind of, I saw something really valuable in the scene, but him just kind of taking a random piece of score, throwing it under there, and like showing it to me was actually really helpful. And being able to have the patience to continue to refine the scene and, do some of the labor that's required to get things assembled. So yeah.
One of my favorite things about this film is the balancing act that undergoes, oscillating between tension, dread, catharsis, payoff, horror, and that scene in the kitchen I think is a perfect encapsulation of all of that, going from like gallows humor to terror to momentum. I think it's a masterwork, sir. I love that scene too.
Oh, amazing! Great.
Any other questions? Yes, right there.
I had a question. Are there any scenes that made the cutting room floor that you wish were in the film, or are you fully satisfied with the final edit?
Question is if there are any scenes on the cutting room floor that you wish made their way back in.
Yeah, interestingly, I feel like this is one of those times where I actually am really happy with everything we took out. The scenes that we had, there was some stuff in, say, the Paul chapter. We lost a couple scenes with him, and one of the reasons was that we take a little diversion from the kids' investigation in this chapter, and we had some other Paul backstory stuff in that section of the movie. And we were finding that it just was taking us too far away from the investigation. So, we ended up lopping those out, and there was another scene in James that got cut. I mean, there was nothing that was on the cutting room floor that I thought was, really amazing, that was a gem I would have liked to have saved. Interesting, in the Paul chapter, one of the ways that we decided to bring the investigation in, we added a little bit of ADR there to try to remind us about the kids. So, for instance, when he's riding around in the police car, there's a radio announcement that brings up what we're going to see in the flyer with the reward for the kids later, and that was added in post to help remind us about this chapter is tied to the investigation with the kids, for instance. And there's also a little line in the police station that's over one of the officers that we looped into. So that was one of the tricks with his chapter. But yeah, I would definitely say, like, unlike other projects, I'd say this one I was pretty like, yeah, I agree with everything that we had to take out, so.
Next question. Yes, right there.
It's mostly about the ending, because you said you trimmed some from the end of the movie. Because like entire movie like really breathes, like you can feel like slower tempo, and in the end you kind of just like bomb and we got to the end. So I just wonder, was it like written like that in the script, and like how much you actually like trimmed from the end to kind of like bring it all home?
Yeah. So question was if you could talk a little bit about the ending in terms of the pacing, coming up to the build-up of the finale and then getting through the how fast that all gets. Talk about the evolution of that.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say that I think that Zach's intent was always to have Alex's chapter feel the way it does, and they did design some of the kind of hard transitions too, where you're cutting from Alex's face and profile in one location to Alex's face and profile in another location, et cetera. But I think that it was just more of a case of watching the film as we got to that point in the movie, we just had to find, like, I think just really minor trims here and there with Alex and his actions, because a lot of them were like Alex cleaning the house, and like we have the entire shot of Alex vacuuming. I mean, how much do we need? You know, maybe we just need him vacuuming a couple of times rather than like the full-on vacuuming of the, you know, back and forth like 20 times or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I mean, I think that it was more of a situation of like, how can we move through Alex's chapter with some of the domestic stuff and his everyday life. And the question about the, I guess, pacing of the ending, I was just mentioning that it's the part that we went really frenetic on was the Gladys getting ripped apart, and that was where we had also tried experimenting with some cross-cutting there. So between, you know, we had, while that the element of cutting between the different locations was in the script, we did enhance that more and went back and went to one other shot of them in the house and one other shot of, you know, Alex and the parents in the bathroom, et cetera, during that Gladys getting killed and mauled.
Nice. Yeah. I think we got time for like 2 more. Anybody? Oh, right there.
With Zach's like previous history as like Whitest Kids You Know and like comedy and anything, was that something that was like heavily in the script, or was it just like more like an Evil Dead where you're like trying to play it serious and then the comedy came out of it?
That's interesting. I always found the movie to be kind of funny. I don't know if Zach always found it as funny as, but yeah, I definitely like. I always feel like humor is like super important. Even in, you know, in drama, you always need to have a joke at times. Like you always need something that's an element of contrast, you know. So yeah, I can't really speak on if that was totally the intent or not, but it definitely was something that was really clear in the footage, you know. And we kind of knew that there were moments, comedic moments throughout the movie that we wanted to lean into.
I don't think it's an accident that the biggest laugh in the movie happens after the biggest scare in the movie. Within like 5 seconds. Like Gladys on the ceiling, Archer springing up, what the fuck? Yeah. Like it's such a great release of tension, and it's a nice little dance you're doing the entire film to balance between those. And they're cousins, they're siblings, and the way you've interacted, Zach and you together, to balance this is wonderful work.
Well, I mean, the thing also with horror and comedy, they're kind of 2 sides of the same coin in a way, you know. So it's suspense and surprise. So they're very related, honestly.
Oh yeah, delay of information, tension. Yeah. How far can you stretch a rubber band?
Exactly.
I think it was Jordan Peele said the only difference between a horror and a comedy is the music.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That might be misquoting, but I remember hearing that somewhere. Any other questions? I think we have time for one more. Oh yeah, way in the back.
Did you watch any films in preparation before editing?
Question was, were there any films you watched as tonal comps or references?
You know, I didn't watch anything that was specific for weapons, but I did just go on a horror movie binge, and I honestly can't even tell you. I watched so many, I couldn't even tell you something specific that was related to this. But for me, it's something I like to do is just watch if there's something that's like. If I'm going to be working on something in a specific genre, I just want to immerse myself in other work, just to get a sense of, you know, maybe I'll take an idea from somewhere. So I guess there was so much, I can't think of something specific that would stand out to me, but I definitely did a lot of movie watching in preparation.
Okay, I got time for one more. I thought I can get one more in. Yes. Oh yeah, right there. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite performance from any of the actors in particular?
Did you have a favorite performance from any of the actors?
You know, actually, one of my favorite scenes is a non-horror scene. I love the bar scene between Julia Garner and Alden. But yeah, that scene was one of the scenes I really enjoyed. And I enjoyed working on it too. And you know, we had there was a lot of extra material in that scene as well. But I think it's a really nice character moment for the two of them. And you know, it was really I think finding their performance in that scene was really enjoyable for me. So.
Well, I think that's about all the time we have. I want to say thank you, everybody, for coming out on the Monday to see Weapons. Yeah. Joe, I think you and Zach have made something that is really special, and I think you're going to see Aunt Gladys's at Halloween parties for several years to come.
I really hope so.
It's wonderful to see this, and I think all the creative people in this room can agree that one of the best things you can do, one of the most rewarding experiences, is to have something that's going to live on. And I think it's safe to say we'll be seeing a lot more of this in time to come. I'd like to thank Warner Brothers. I'd like to thank American Cinema Editors and Impact 24 for arranging tonight's event. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Joe. Wonderful work. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it.